This video is not intended to encourage or glorify any kind of drug use. The sole purpose of these videos is to educate you on the dangers of what these substances can do to you. Please do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video. I repeat, do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video.
Welcome to the world of Tales from the Trip.
In the chance my channel gets terminated again, I have all my stuff uploaded on my Spotify at Tales from the Trip. Just search it up. There's also a link in every description of all my videos. I upload every single thing I've been doing there recently, and I am uploading old videos as well. I just wanted to point that out if you guys were interested. Thank you, and let's get to the video. Thought I'd write a report on the time I accidentally put myself in a coma. I have sat on this story for a while, as there isn't much to say about before I blacked out, but I feel it's important to share the risks of this substance. Yes, I know the doses were incredibly stupid, and this was a while ago, so timestamps won't be too accurate. It started as a normal day when my best mate at the time called to come over. He asked if I wanted to try some Baclofen since he had just got a script for 25mg tablets, which I agreed to. Usually with drugs, I'll research extensively on dosages and safety measures. This is the only time I failed to do so, which ended up being a major mistake. He came over and handed me 10 pills and poured himself 10. I asked how much I should take, but he didn't seem to know either and ate all 10, so I did the same. We smoke a little bit of weed and decide we should get some alcohol and go for a walk while these kick in. After about 30 minutes, the first signs of something happening begin, a similar feeling to a pregabalin high. We walk into some mates from school and talk for a bit, where I say I'm not feeling much and take another 6. Bad idea. I get to the bottle and get the drinks, but at this point, my mate's starting to feel sick and has thrown up. The walk back home was a struggle. I was all over the place, and he kept throwing up, and I began drinking. We finally got home where my friend goes straight to the toilet. I drink more and make him some food so he hopefully feels better. At this point, I begin feeling incredibly drunk and sit on the floor making sure he's alright. His mom comes over and is wondering why he's sick, which we try to put the blame on the drinking. I still wanted to get more fucked up, so I grabbed some Klonopin and Lyrica, took 600mg of Lyrica and 6mg of Klonopin, and gave my mate a Klonopin for when he's feeling better. He continues in the toilet, and I get to drinking more until his mom says he's got to go home now, and she realizes something is wrong. I begin to feel it come on some more, and I'm getting questioned by his mom, but can't remember the word Baclofen and didn't want to get caught. I kept telling my mom I didn't take anything as they drove off. She began questioning me a lot, which is when it all started to hit. It went from a drunkenness to a rush akin to MDMA. I began to sweat and my eyes were darting around. I kept telling my mom I didn't take anything, but this is where everything goes black. I collapse off the chair I was sitting into a frenzy, during which I start choking on my vomit and start asphyxiating. An ambulance was rushed over and my friend's mom was alerted on what happened. Around that time, he started getting less responsive and taken to the hospital. He was able to leave a lot quicker than me since he threw up. I'd filled my entire left lung with vomit and had a vacuum-like tube put down my throat to clear it. 3 days go by. My last memory was sitting at my kitchen table. I wake up, tied down, unable to move, naked, with a tube down my throat and a catheter. It took a while for them to realize I woke up, and the tube felt like it was choking me, and I was only able to communicate by pointing at letters. After I stabilized, I was put into the psych ward involuntarily for 3 days, as usual with overdoses. This experience gave me PTSD, and I still struggle with flashbacks or the fear that when I fall asleep, I'll wake up in the hospital with a tube down my throat. I was extremely lucky to not become a vegetable, brain dead, or actually dead, and hope no one has to go through this. Research your drugs, and don't take stupid doses like me, as things can get out of hand very quickly. I've been taking the muscle relaxer Baclofen off and on now for 2 years. I found that taking more than the recommended dose will without a doubt create a very long euphoric high. If I take 420 milligrams at 9 a.m., my high will last until I pass out. When I say pass out, I mean it's almost like narcolepsy. I'll fall asleep anywhere. This medication isn't a controlled substance, so it's super easy to get from my doctor, and it's relatively cheap. A few months back, I took 420 milligram Baclofen around noonish, then went on a walk with my husband. By the time I got back home, I was feeling very sleepy and fell asleep for about 20 minutes. When I woke up, I couldn't remember if I had taken the medication, so I took another 4, and this is when the shit hit the fan. It was around 2 or 3 p.m., and I began feeling extremely wasted. I had no control over what I was saying or doing. My husband was a witness to it all and even videotaped it so I could see it the next day. I was yelling out randomly, clapping my hands, and refused to sit down, but I was being nice, like I was in the best mood ever, says my husband. Then, during this episode, I took another 4 pills. 1 hour later is a blur, and I can only remember flashes of things. I refused to wear my clothing. I wouldn't sit down. I was rambling on, things that made no sense. Then sometime around 10 p.m., I began vomiting. It didn't matter where I was in the house. I puked wherever I was stationed. Every 10 minutes I was throwing up nothing but bile. This I remember clearly. Every time I woke up after passing out, I would attempt to find my bedroom door and had absolutely no luck. I watched the video my husband shot the next day, and it showed me convulsing with no control of my arms or hands, almost like a seizure. The hangover was intense. Everything smelled and tasted chemically and nasty. I have to say, this was one of the scariest things that has ever happened to me. How close I came to death, and I know this because of the videos that were shot that night. Never again have I taken this drug. I wouldn't risk it. But it does create the longest euphoric high out of anything I ever ingested or smoked. The only real issue with this drug is that it fucks with my memory, and if I forgot I had already taken it, then take more, then it could very well kill me. Years ago, I sustained a concussion from being punched in the head. It dramatically and permanently worsened my short-term memory and concentration. It also caused chronic emotional lability, anxiety, and occasional rage. I also sustained another concussion a few years later. I've recently been searching for a neurochemical solution. Yesterday at 6:30 a.m., I took 12.5 milligrams of generic Baclofen. By 7:15, I didn't feel much of anything, possibly a mild diminution in anxiety, so I took another 25 milligrams. I ate a normal breakfast, went to work. By 10:30 a.m., I felt a slightly more perceptible decrease in inhibition and anxiety, but nothing major. This lasted for another 4 hours or so until around 2:30 p.m. and then gradually went away, but it was mild enough that I was hardly sure it was there. I came home from work and at 6 p.m. decided I'd take a higher dose, 125 milligrams, to see if Baclofen would really do anything for me. I went to IKEA an hour later to buy some home furnishings. For 2 hours after ingestion, I had very little effect from it, at which point, 8 p.m., I started feeling the decrease in anxiety again. It wasn't hedonic in any way, but it was slightly convenient in that it allowed me to do basic things, asking for directions from the store employees in IKEA, for example, without the usual second thought or slight anxiety. It also decreased obsessiveness. I didn't insist on doing or saying things multiple times, but it certainly didn't improve my memory or concentration, on the contrary. By 9:30 p.m., I sat down to a little dinner with my mother, who had kindly accompanied me on the IKEA trip during her visit to town. By 10 p.m., I started feeling woozy and a little sick. The room was spinning slightly. It felt like I was drunk, but without the hedonic or energized aspects that I usually get from ethanol. At 10:30 p.m., I started driving us home. Big mistake. What should have been a 30-minute trip took around 60 minutes due to my many wrong turns. I found myself going down incorrect routes and one-way streets and weaving out of my lane. I also felt quite nauseous, though not enough to vomit and without the intensity that alcohol causes. I occasionally rubbed my head because I was feeling so weird and unpleasant. My poor mother was concerned, but was too sweet to say anything about it, even though she knows I've been using various meds to deal with the concussion symptoms, and therefore probably guessed my condition was drug-induced, something I told her after getting home. By the time we got home, I was having trouble driving or walking straight. I was also repeating myself and took 4 attempts to parallel park the car. I could barely figure out how to get the furniture out of the car and into the apartment. I walked by my apartment door without realizing it, then had to walk back when my mom pointed out that we were in the wrong hallway. I passed out at 12 a.m. I woke up at 7 a.m., still feeling the effects of the Baclofen, woozy, head spinning, and still with diminished anxiety, still feeling the same at 7:30. I've long suspected that asthma that I got a few years after the concussions may have been partly triggered by them. I realize this is an unusual possibility, but there is a history of mild autoimmune disorders that runs in the family, and I thought there might be a connection. Drugs acting on the NMDA glutamate receptors, especially memantine, have been helpful in the past for both the anxiety and, to a lesser extent, for the asthma. At 7:15 a.m., feeling woozy from the Baclofen, I noticed that my breathing was a little easier, so I tested the asthma hypothesis by running around my apartment floor 3 times, something that would normally induce bronchial inflammation and a lot of coughing. I got no inflammation or coughing at all. This seems to confirm my theory that glutamate/GABA action may have something to do with my particular case of asthma. The negative effects of Baclofen at high doses, wooziness, worsening of memory to the point where I was forgetting things I was doing, effectively blacking out while still awake, made it useless as a cognitive enhancer. I know, it's silly to take Baclofen for cognitive enhancement. It's too early to say whether I'll feel much rebound effect. The upshot at this point is that Baclofen affected me just like alcohol, but without any positive effects, though also without the hangover headache, at least so far. Each 25 milligram tablet of Baclofen had the approximate effect of 2 shots of vodka, so I'd say my final dosing of Baclofen, 125 milligrams, was comparable to 10 shots of vodka in duration and effects on memory, motor control, and cognition. I have no interest in trying Baclofen again.